Welcome to The Longer Game. If you're listening to a show about retail being reimagined. If you'd like to connect with The Longer Game, look for The Longer Game at thelongergame.com and on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn at The Longer Game. We're here to talk about retail, why it's changing, how it's changing, and what you can expect in the future. We're not trying to take ourselves too seriously, but we do want to know what that retail landscape is going to look like. I hope you enjoy your time listening to this podcast. We try to keep it as quick as possible because we don't want to waste your time, but we want to keep you informed. Thanks for tuning in. Now, here's the show. This is The Longer Game, where we talk about retail reimagined. We talk about the future of retail. So complicated and diverse, and there's so many different options for shopping today. And we like to talk about how all those things intermingle together. Today, I have on the show with me Ron Thurston. He is the author of Retail Pride, the guide to your accidental career. Is that right?
Celebrating
your accidental career. Okay. And he is also the founder of I keep messing this up. I don't know why I can't do that.
It's called Take Pride Today.
Take Pride Today. Okay.
Take Pride Today. And I'll tell you what that means. And
tell me a little bit more, because clearly I'm not good at introducing you. I just remember Retail Pride because I've seen that book. And it's a really interesting title. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about yourself, about Take Pride Today and Retail Pride.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So I'm a longtime retail leader, kind of working my way up from literally sales, assistant manager, store manager, district manager, head of stores the last decade or so. And
you've been on the front lines, basically.
I've been on the front lines my whole career. And what I discovered and kind of realized to be very true is that the largest population of employees in this country work in retail. 1 out of 4 people in the US work in the retail industry in some format. A significant percentage of that are in stores. But I sat across from people during interviews and all the hundreds of store visits I've done all over the world who didn't always have the pride in their career.
Yeah,
it is considered kind of a fallback. There's no specific education. There's no particular journey. If you start here, you'll end here. There's no particular money aspiration. Like, all of it feels, for many people, very accidental.
Yeah.
And I just kept, the longer I kept doing this, and as I get further into my career, I'm like, we have to find ways to celebrate the people doing the hardest work for this industry, which is in stores.
Well, you're serving people in a very personal way, and there are these unwritten rules about retail, about how people maybe should treat other people, but also how customers end up treating people that work in retail stores. I've worked in store retail before, and it's not very, it depends upon the people, but it's not always very rewarding. And you're dealing with a lot of different, even on a store manager level, you're dealing with, different wide age groups of people, different scheduling, different people's idea of what the job or the work should be, what they're willing to do. I mean, there's a lot of variables that are in there.
A lot of variables. And so I think the skill that it requires to say, be a store manager of a $2 million store in any mall in this country is underestimated about what that takes. Because you're right, you're leading a team. Maybe that team is 4, maybe it's 40.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a $2 million store. Maybe it's a $20 million store. Run both. You've got certainly customer experiences, but merchandising, store operations, loss prevention, cash management, back of house, front of house, corporate directives. You're running a multi-million-dollar business, and often kind of sitting out there on your own, and often very self-taught.
Yeah.
Because there's no school that would say you're going to be a good store manager. The only way you become great in this industry is by doing the work and sometimes failing. And on top of it, choosing great brands and great leaders to follow.
I was going to say, sometimes you have a good person,
career,
I remember having a good boss when I worked in retail, I worked at Starbucks, and I remember having a good boss who was very supportive of me. She was there. She's like, "Look, you're going to have some issues. I heard about blah 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 blah. Don't worry, I got your back." And she knew that I was there to do good work, but she was willing to help me, and I just so appreciate her as an individual. She was very she wanted results, but she was very kind too in how she approached things, and so I remember that.
I mean, and that's such a good story because we need more of that in retail. And it's so inspiring to me, it always has been, to spend time in stores. And whether you're visiting as an executive of the company or as a customer, when you see it done really well, you want more. You're like, I want to spend my money here. I want to support you. I want to give you whatever you need to be successful. And it's so unique about this industry in the size and scale of it, the diversity of businesses, the diversity of teams, and the fact that you're kind of, hopefully have a good boss, hopefully have a company with great training, hopefully have all those things. And at the end of the day, they're still running multi-million-dollar businesses and have a huge impact on the economy of this country. Amazon and all, I know we'll talk about that because that's your world, but the store.
Oh, we don't have to talk about Amazon. I talk about it all the time. So,
but the store component of this, still making up, projected by 2025 to be somewhere still 70% of all commerce done, and is still in a store.
Yeah,
like that. You can't ignore the fact that this is a gigantic group of people who just continue to need inspiration and ways to manage their career.
Well, a lot of people look at e-commerce and Amazon and they get really excited by that. And my thought process, even for the clients that we serve, which is it's mostly Amazon, we're working on helping them providing a service for Walmart.com. But we always tell them being omni-channel is the future. Like, go shopping in stores, despite what the pandemic may have done initially, that's not going away. And I don't ever see that going away. Part of the reason I say that is because we're humans. We want human interaction, even if sometimes we treat the person on the other end like shit. We still want human interactions. Maybe we just need a lesson on how to better treat people. But we want an experience. And I've even seen that I've used this example so many times, but on Amazon, there was, they've started to allow 360 photos. So you can see a product all the way around. And there was a bug spray company that was putting a 360 photo up on their listing, kind of testing what that would look like. And you'd think, okay, it's bug spray. Like, is it effective? What are the chemicals or what's in it? Does it work?
Right.
How many ounces? How long is it going to last me? And that's pretty much it, right? They added a 360 photo in their listing and it increased the conversion rate by 10%. And for me, that says people want a tactile experience. They want to experience what a product is going to be like. And that's something before they purchase, that's something that we deal with on Amazon a lot is returns. Someone says, oh, this product wasn't like it seems. Well, it's the same product. We didn't change it, before it got shipped. So what is it that's missing there? And I really see, especially stuff in store not going away, but just changing into hopefully more experience oriented where, okay, we can utilize e-commerce logistics. Maybe we don't need the biggest store. We can have, a big storage in the back end, but really create an awesome experience for people in store. Like, I would still go to that. I still want to go to that. And yeah, my whole livelihood is based on Amazon.
Right. And because it's so human. It's so part of how we experience life. It's how, so much of this country was built, around community and retail and like the local general store and the impact that had. Like, that's how this, big families like the Macy's family, that come to the US and build the infrastructure of retail. Like, it is so much about how the world was built. And I love that about it. But the kind of the complexities of it, like I said earlier, are really like underestimated of what it really means to work in retail.
Can you give me an example of that? Like, put it into context of like what's one one, I mean, I'm sure you've got thousands of experiences to pull from, but what's one
Yeah.
thing that you could, explain to listeners?
I think any time that you are customer facing, that you don't know where that's going go. And so I
Okay.
think your ability to then lead with empathy and like really lean in of what that means, like how is that customer experiencing your brand today? Like what can you do to lead with empathy and be highly curious all the time? And it's part of the book, and then be focused to accomplish what you want to get done is a for me the recipe for success in retail. But that comes in many forms. So to answer your question, if I reflect back, you know, several years ago, I was the head of stores for Saint Laurent, which
Okay.
is Paris based. It's one of the most important luxury houses in the world, as a rooted in a deep history in both kind of the U.S. and in Paris, and like his Yves Saint Laurent story, and then how it has translated over several different creative directors. But you could have we'll just say I'm a commissioned sales associate here in New York City in a $20 million business. I'm selling $2 million a year myself, and I have a long list of clients. I have this really important store. I have like high demand, high pressure, and may, I may not have the experience to do this job, but I'm learning it as I grow.
Okay.
And I think that's the point, that it's like you often are in these positions that don't always have rooted in deep training, and you kind
Yeah.
of like, okay, I'm empathetic, I understand the price point, I understand the history and selling and engaging and creating relationships. It's complex. It's driven in achieving sales goals and million
Yes.
dollar benchmarks. It's highly complex. I keep saying it, but it's so true. And no matter whether I work in the dollar store or I work at Saint Laurent, it's complex and it's important. And
Yeah, and that's
the
interesting because it doesn't change regardless of what, I mean, whatever the merchandise is. People might have a different perspective on Yves Saint Laurent versus the dollar store, but there's still all these different factors that go into it. Like, have I been trained? Do I have an understanding of it? Like, when it comes to even just checkout, do I understand how to engage someone while I'm checking them out, or am I head down doing
right.
something like kind of making the experience more awkward? Same as the grocery store. Like, and I think the other side of that is people come in with expectations of what it's going to be like. Someone who walks in the dollar store, they have an expectation of, oh, this is going to be, maybe they think, oh, this is going to be weird, or it's going to be, if they're not used to shopping in a dollar store, and this is going to be kind of sad, or whatever the case might be. And really, you're like,
Yep.
oh wow, they've actually got some cool stuff here. Or people going into an Yves Saint Laurent could think, oh, it's going to be stuffy, it's going to be, they're going to be really disengaged, and they could be super engaging and really, really kind. And that's also something that you're having to deal with. And no one's training for that.
No one's trained. You may hire for that. Hopefully you're doing, who's ever
Sure.
doing the hiring is hiring, training, onboarding, all of it. But you're exactly right. And where you can exceed those expectations is the beauty of the experience. And I love to tell this story. It was several months ago on LinkedIn. The district manager for the dollar store had posted pictures of her stock room in every store. I don't even remember what part of the country, of a wall of gratitude from the team of like what they were most grateful for. And like it was sparkles and glitter and colored construction paper, and like she was asking people on LinkedIn to vote for the best gratitude wall
Oh
in the
wow.
back of her stores from the dollar store. And of course, I'm like immediately messaging her of like, I love you. What can I do? Can I send you books? Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
obsessed with you. But like that kind of story, like, why do we say that luxury is actually a better place to work, or that is easier than the
Yeah.
dollar store? Because it's not. I
Oh
can tell you
no.
that it's not. And that they're all important. They're all in some version of the omni world. They're all in like the ecosystem of retail.
Yeah.
But we can't underestimate that. And we do, I think, sometimes disengage from our perception of like price and service. And that, I just imagine myself like in those stores of that district manager for that dollar store. Her teams are probably very engaged. The stores probably look great, stock, stock shelves, probably a good checkout system.
Yeah.
I would say that I'm on the board of directors of Goodwill, and I spend, even just the end of last week, spend time visiting stores here in New York City. I mean, talk about a business, again, a multi-million dollar business right here on 14th Street that is driven by whatever gets dropped off that day.
Yeah.
And that customers do visit. They have, funny enough, a Goodwill customer often visits every day. Hey, what came in? And they want to see
Right.
like new arrivals is whatever their neighbor dropped off to be sold at the Goodwill store.
It's almost like a record store or any place where there's used merchandise. You're like, hey, what was dropped off? Is there something unique or something like one of the reasons I, as a teenager, would shop at Goodwill is I wanted clothes that like other people didn't have, and I'm like, you can get that
Yep.
at Goodwill, and so that was cool. But also, like, there were, as a musician, I would go to Goodwill or sometimes pawn shops and look at like, there's something for sale there that's really worth something, and maybe it needs to be fixed up a little bit, or maybe
Yep.
it's totally working fine, but someone just doesn't know what that capacity of that thing is, and so I buy it, and now I have this great thing that I got as a great find, and it's like, super exciting.
Super excited, and probably paid like $5 for it, like that.
Oh yeah, and
That
then
idea.
sold it later for 100 or something like that.
Correct. But that pride, the reason I say that is because the pride that comes with any of those businesses when they're well led is
Yeah.
enormous. And the managers I met here in New York for Goodwill, 5 years with the brand, 7 years with the brand. I was visiting stores upstate New York a couple weeks ago, 20 years with the brand.
Wow.
You don't stay working at Goodwill for 20 years if it in one store, if it isn't a great place to work, and that you find value in how you contribute to the community and why that's important work for you, because the revenue generated in a Goodwill store goes back into the communities to
Right.
get people jobs, job training programs, and temp agencies. And here in New York, it's an enormous business. And so that the idea of every part of retail is important. You just have to discover the story of why it's important and why people love being there. And then you layer in like great technology, and you layer in omni opportunities and
Yeah.
capabilities, and great product and great culture. And it's a great career like I have had. But it doesn't come without effort of intentionally making that happen.
Well, I would also say you brought up that district manager, from the dollar store, saying on LinkedIn, "Hey, vote for which gratitude board you like the best."
Mhm.
And I've thought about this ever since working at Starbucks many years ago, that each store that you walk in, you could go to this, from a Starbucks perspective, you could go to two stores directly in New York City. I mean, you could go two across the street because people aren't even
Mhm.
crossing the street. They're just like, I'm on this side of the street, and that's the way that I go. So it makes sense
Yep.
to have two across the street. Not so much in Cincinnati, downtown.
Right.
People are gonna be like, okay, well, it's right over there. I'm gonna go over there. But you could have two totally different store managers and two totally different vibes, and they're representing the same company. And that
Yep.
is really, for me, thinking about being a brand owner, like, that's a little scary because someone could be totally misrepresenting what the brand is meant to be. I mean, Starbucks, as it was, growing in the 90s and 2000s, it was about being what they call the third place. It was about being that
Mhm.
place you went to outside of home and work, and where you were, a regular, and you felt comfortable to be, and people knew you. And it would sometimes even get to the point where, customers that had come in to a store for a while, if there was a new person, they'd be like, oh, they know my drink. And it's like, they wouldn't even
Mhm.
tell you. They just say, oh yeah, they know my drink. And it's like, oh yeah, I know Bonnie, she gets this, skinny vanilla latte, blah, 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 and it's extra hot
Yeah.
and all this stuff. And eventually you learn, you know, that person is a regular, but like that person's almost more ingrained in the store and more invested in the store than you are as someone who's working there. So that it's so dependent. I guess what I would say is it's very dependent upon leadership. Like the woman
Yep.
that was the district manager of the dollar stores. She obviously was a great leader and was empowering her teams to not just think to have pride in what they were doing. Like, what are you thankful for? You have an opportunity to work. You have an opportunity to impact people. The price point is different, yes, but you know, it really, really depends upon great leadership, and that can be tough if you've got people who are disgruntled and don't appreciate. They're like, oh, I'm just doing this because this is my job or whatever, and I'm going to work my way up, and I'm not happy being a store manager or whatever the case might be.
Yep. And I can say from personal experience, there's probably, I think there are 4 or 5 Starbucks here within probably 2 blocks of my apartment here. And that's
Yeah.
100% true. They are widely different. But I also love that question, because I do get this question sometimes in the press, like who's doing it really well? Like which brands are doing it really well? And I'm like, there's actually there's no answer to this question, because you could have a great district, a great store for a brand that you may not perceive as being great.
Mm-hmm.
And there are really terrible stores for brands you perceive are.
Oh yeah.
And because of exactly that, store manager, maybe district manager, but I actually think store manager plays a much bigger role, because you're
for
so
sure.
close.
Yep.
You're so close to like hiring, training, engaging, culture, that there's a unique aspect of you as the owner of that business, even if your name's not on top of the impact you had. And I can share. So I had been a multi-store leader for many years, running kind of districts and regions, and I wanted to work at Apple, and because this was right, it was right after iPhone 1, and I was like,
okay,
this is a place I need to work. I
yeah,
need to understand how this is. So I joined, and they said, your only role you can come into is as a store manager again. And I think the job prior, I was running like 120 stores.
Oh,
like, you're gonna come back and run a store. And I'm like, let's do it. Like I hadn't done it for a long time, but let's do it.
Okay.
And it was like a suburban, not important store in a mall. It's in Houston. And I said, I'm gonna take this on as the biggest challenge and make this the best Apple store in the world. Just here by my, as the store manager of this store. And it was kind of a mishmash team, and it was not a group of 8 players. I'm like, we're gonna make this happen.
Yeah.
And my first week was the launch of iPhone 2, but we launched iPad and MacBook Air and several.
Wow.
But we ended up that particular store with some of the best service results in the world, and
wow,
was awarded for that. Won awards for the best service. And then they're like, oh, this guy seems to know what he's doing, and I became a multi-store leader for Apple. But in those opportunities to say, it wasn't actually all of the stores in Houston had the best service. My store had the best service. And I had a great,
it's because of the passion and leadership that you brought to that team. And you're dealing with in-store dynamics of like, you were new to the brand as a store manager, and there were likely people in the store that maybe wanted to move up and be a store manager. And so they're thinking, oh, well, I'm more qualified to do this than that person. You have to win those people over and say like, hey, look, I'm here to support you. And then you've got people who maybe just don't care. And then some people who are like, hey, I'm happy to be like, I want to do a great job. I want to do my job well. How can I help you? You've got all those different dynamics. And so to be able to leverage that team into something that's powerful and that wins awards like that, I a lot of times see people who want to get into higher roles because they want to get away from the in-store experience, and it's like, well, they just want to grow their salary or grow their career, whatever the case might be. And you're looking at it from a different lens, which is, how do we, doesn't matter how far removed from a leadership level I am from the store, how do we make that in-store experience as good as possible? That's a totally different perspective that probably 50% of out of store leaders are doing, 50% aren't. They're just focused on metrics and all this other stuff. But like
Yeah,
that's the brand is the front lines, the people that are in the store. Someone has a bad experience at an Apple store, they think Apple sucks. And
correct.
it was one person. It was one person.
Correct.
Now, they may not be the biggest buyer of Apple products, but they tell other people go in that same store, have bad
Yep.
experiences. They're turned off. They're like, well, I'm going to go buy a Sony Vaio or whatever the other computer is. But like, that's crazy. That's crazy that's that powerful.
It's so powerful. And even just this morning, there was a kind of this post on LinkedIn, the trend of self checkout. That brands like Zara or Amazon 5-star, 4-star,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, and many others, certainly grocery, is all moving to self checkout. And my point of view is that that's actually the best opportunity to engage with someone when done well. Where changing your perception of your experience can happen at checkout. And if you have like someone who, oh, wow, it's like, Michael, like, how was your experience here? Like, we're really happy that you're here. We really appreciate your business. We want to make sure you come back. Hey, how's your family? Like, the list goes on about even what a checkout experience can do for your
Yeah.
perception of the brand. Because if it's poor, maybe your experience coming in was fine. Someone said hello to you. Maybe they got you a fitting room, found something in stock, whatever. If the checkout experience is poor, you're going to remember the checkout experience or how hard self-checkout was. But if someone was
That's your last
really,
experience in the store too. So
it's
it's
your
probably
last
the most
experience,
memorable.
and then you get the survey of like, hey, Michael, how was your experience? You're going to remember the checkout. And you're like, it may have been an 8 or a 9, but you're going to give it a 6. So all of a sudden I'm a passive when it comes to your brand.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not telling anyone it was terrible, but I'm not telling anyone it was great. Versus like the 9-10 that says, I'm going to promote your brand. I'm going to tell everyone how that particular location was phenomenal, but tell my friends to go there. Like, there's so much power in every touch point. And certainly in delivery world and, all of that, it's like speed of delivery and quality is important
Yeah.
in promoting, but that in-store piece, every touch point provides that chance
Well, and
to do it
you
well.
can create brand evangelists out of just everyday people. Like that's why experience is so important. And when I talk to, so I have a team of about 12 people now, and everybody's remote, but I talk about interacting with our clients and how we have to really make sure that we're pulling out the stops, we're communicating with them, we're making them feel heard. And so I'm listening in on conversations and coaching and saying, hey, I would say this right here because this thing does XYZ, or I would present this to them in this way because they're feeling like this, they're feeling not heard, and so we need to make sure that they're feeling heard. And there's a lot of experience just can be very, very impactful. But there are clients that I like working with that I buy their products, I pay for their products when I could very easily ask them to send us stuff for free. And I tell other people, or I'll be like, oh, hey, like we have a client who makes these really awesome pens. This is like a $60 pen. Okay. I never thought I need a $60 pen. It's brass. It's very heavy. So it feels very nice when you're writing with it. It's very easy action to open up. It's nice and thick. You buy the pen for life and you just change out the ink. But this brand's called Everyman. And this gentleman who owns this brand is such a great guy. He just makes me want to crush it for him when we go out there. I'm like, I want your brand to get big. So there's been periods where I'm, working somewhere and I have friends there and I say, hey, like, try this pen. What do you think about it? I'm like, whoa, this is cool. And I'm like, cool, have it. Like, take it and use it. And it's a great experience. And I'm like, I never thought I would need a $30 or $40 pen. And I mean, in all honesty, I don't need it. But you can also start to justify it from a cost perspective. If you're like, I'm going to buy Bics, and I'm going to spend a lot of money on these over my life period. And instead of doing that, I could just buy one nice one and refill the ink. that might even be a better experience as well. But people are willing to even pay a little bit more to have a better experience. And people will, like you said, the country is kind of built on mom and pop shops. It's very easy to say, I don't like this store. I'm not going to bring my business here anymore. I'm going to go somewhere else. And it's very easy to also influence, what's better than a lead that you get as you have a service company, and a lead that comes in and they're like, oh, we've heard, I see you do great work based on your website. What could be better than that? It's someone who says, I know these people and I trust them, and I think that they would do good work for you. And we've had people who don't even get other proposals. They just had a really great referral, and they come in. Someone has basically been a brand evangelist for us because of the work we did for them. And now they brought us other business. And that's like how like how you bring in new customers is also, and maintain your current ones, is by investing in the current ones, because they can also help bring in other people. And it's more service intensive, but I think it's more impactful too.
It's enormous. And when you think about the future of client acquisition and client retention and growth, that's where so many kind of D2C brands have said, wow, like the impact that I can have on people being able to touch and feel and experience my brand, meet me, all of it, and grow my business, even if it's temporarily, is a gigantic part of how they build. Exactly to your point. Then people want to come spend their money, engage with you, and find new ways to continue to interact with your brand and promote your brand. It's like retail is the best way to do that in many cases. Even there's kind of trend of short-term leases and building businesses that are about client acquisition. Like that becomes a huge part of saying this. Okay. It's one step in their journey of growth.
So they're acquiring the client, and then maybe they move sales to their website or something like that, but they're starting with an in-store experience.
They could start direct to consumer, or start on Amazon, and then move. I was in a store here in New York City for a gentleman who kind of startup fashion brand. He showed at New York Fashion Week. Then from New York Fashion Week in September till the end of this year, found a temporary space, getting as many customers in there as he can.
Okay.
Gets out of that space the end of December, goes back to online only. And like there's this kind of circle of life that happens with brands, that part of that circle is that human experience, whatever version that is for your brand. Maybe it's a cart, maybe it's a truck, something that says, I want to see and feel and touch. And I said to him, I'm like, your product is beautiful, but the story is you. People have to meet
absolutely.
You.
Yeah.
And see you. You are the founder. Just like I am my book. It's not the book, it's actually me and the story of like why I wrote it. And so all of that to say, we have to think of this in a very kind of ecosystem way that involves omni, that involves great product, that involves brick and mortar, but it always involves people. And that's where I gravitate, because that impact has the biggest influence on the success and potential failure of any brand. Is what are the people doing, both on the kind of corporate side, but having spent my life in stores, I'm really devoted to making sure that they have great experiences.
Well, there's so many dynamics. Like, do the people that are in the corporate seats care about the people that are on the front lines? And if they do the front lines people know that? And if not, does that affect, if they don't feel that, or the corporate doesn't care about them, does that show up in the in-store experience? Yeah, it likely does. And that's actually one of the most confusing things about Amazon, or has been. It's starting to change, but someone has a bad experience with an order, like it was late and it arrived broken. They're leaving product reviews, and it's not that the product was bad, it's that it arrived damaged during shipping, or the person that sold it to them didn't take much care in wrapping it, or whatever the case might be. It wasn't the brand. And so it's just a reseller. And so someone has a bad experience. Well, they're going and rating the brand. They're not rating, you. They're saying, oh, I got a bad product, and the person that was reselling it, or the person that's, they didn't give me a replacement. They just assume it's, let's just say like Adidas or something. Like they just assume, oh, well, there was a rip in this and it's poor quality and Adidas sucks. I'm going to go start buying Nike. It had nothing to do with them.
Right.
And that's why, and that's why it's so important that we tell brands all the time, especially digitally native brands that are selling on their own website. 54% of people are doing product research on Amazon. They're going and looking up stuff. So that can impact your in-store sales. That can impact your, someone's more, I think 50% more likely to buy from a brand they don't know on Amazon than any other site. And that's not because Amazon's good at making products. They're basically a really trusted distribution network. That's right. What they are. They built trust through books, and they gather data, and they built out a really complex logistics system that has allowed them to deliver stuff quickly. And if your brand is misrepresented on Amazon and it has poor ratings, that could affect the experience outside, which is why it's important to have good presence on and off Amazon. And which is why, while I might focus on Amazon, I tell my clients, like, you should be in stores. Wherever your clients are or wherever consumers are, if they're going to a Macy's and they're also shopping online and they also are a Prime member, then you should be in multiple spots where those people are, because you have multiple touch points now. And if they had a good experience directly on your website, they may also buy your product in a Macy's because they believe in your brand and they support your brand. And it's right there, and like, oh, I'm already here, I might as well get this product.
Yep. And and that's why I love the conversation of the balance of all the different channels, because you're right. Kind of someone who is not even related to this industry will say to me, well, but look at the growth of Amazon. Like stores are growing, or stores are like, they only see the headlines, mall closures and all this, and the facts don't back any of that up. So I actually kind of thoroughly enjoy correcting people when it comes to
sure, yeah,
I do. Of like, actually, there are more stores opening in 2022 than have opened in the last decade.
Like, well, it's like when technology changes and an ecosystem of retail changes, we see the news headlines, like, when the Industrial Revolution was happening, a lot of people who were farmers who were doing stuff by hand, or factories, or other people were like, oh, we're going to be put out of a job by machines. And in reality, these machines allow for greater production, so more people could produce more things. And you're just seeing what we've been focusing on change or diminish because other new things are coming about. Like you said, majority of sales are still happening in store. Like, that's not going away. And if anything, my focus would be, how do we utilize technology so we can create a better, more human experience? How do we automate the things that we don't need to focus on, a human doesn't need to have their hands on? And how do we get that person, and how do we get that person to be more engaging? Like in a self-checkout store, instead of someone being worried about checkout, they can say, hey, like in an Amazon Go store, like, I've had this brand and it's really good, but I'd also recommend, like, if they're looking at, protein drinks or something, I'd recommend this one. This one has a really good taste and flavor. Now they're engaging and they're providing a better experience, but the technology is, if it's seamless at checkout, now they're just not even thinking about checkout. They're thinking about, oh, I had a good talk with that person that was in the store and they really cared about what I wanted.
Exactly right. And so that starts in the kind of hiring, training, onboarding, understanding all that product knowledge training, all of that happens. And then it engages with the customer. And then that conversation happens. And then the repeat business for the brand. And like, it's full circle all the time. And we can't ignore the importance of this huge group of people.
So tell us quickly about retail in America. This is your tour that's coming up, correct?
It's tour. So in 2022 spring, I am leaving New York City for at least a year, is my commitment, to travel the country and to have these kinds of conversations, just like you and I are having, with the people doing the work in stores all over the
awesome.
US. and an Airstream. And so I'll be living remotely. Part of it is also, how do you take pressure off the system? How do you shop only local? How do you support community? How do you then engage with retail teams? And through some great sponsors like Ubic, which is a big platform for employee training.
Okay.
KWI is a big platform for POS systems
Okay.
in stores. Both of these companies' platforms have big customer bases, and Spotify from a music point of view and kind of local playlists, kind of by city, and how music plays a really important part in our retail experience.
Oh, for sure.
The whole immersion of sensory in retail. So through these partners and Airstream, this big tour. So we'll be a podcast and a YouTube channel, and definitely a kind of a newsletter, lots of Instagram. There's a whole big plan. So the Retail in America tour.
That's exciting. Well, when you get to close to Cincinnati, look me up, and I'll buy you a drink or coffee or whatever the case might be on me. If people want to find you and find out more about what you're doing, where should they look? Should they look in stores? Should they look, at the top of a skyscraper in New York City? Are you in the back room, in the stock room, sorting? Where can people find you, Ron?
I'm all of those places.
Okay.
You can find me in the back of a Goodwill store. It's like sorting donations. You can find me on Instagram at Retail Pride.
Okay.
You can find me on Amazon. The book is best suited on Amazon, hardcover and paperback, at Retail Pride, and then definitely LinkedIn at Ron Thurston. Those are, and retailpride.com will get you to all those places.
Okay, you cut out there just for a little bit. Retailpride.com, you said.
Retailpride.com will get you links to everything.
Cool. Well, you heard it here first, people. The InStore experience is not going away. And I'm not even ashamed to say that, because I just know that I'm part of a bigger, as an Amazon service provider, I'm a part of a bigger ecosystem. So think about next time when you go to a store, think about that experience. Think about some of the things that are causing you to want to be there, causing you to want to maybe not be there, and think about how that could be impacting, the brands that you're working with overall. And just know that I always say, anytime I'm on any kind of new system where it's like, give a bio, and I just say human raised by humans, because I love that line in Elf with that little girl. But, we're all humans. We're all here to engage with each other. We want human interaction. So let's make that the best and most positive experiences possible. Thank you, Ron, for coming on today and talking about retail. And it got me, more excited about thinking about brands and what that experience looks like. And it was just fun to have that conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise. Thanks very much, Michael.
So that's The Longer Game, everybody. If you want to find us, you can go to thelongergame.com. We don't have any fancy outros. So that's it. The show's over. See you later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Longer Game. We genuinely appreciate your time. And if you want to connect with us, please reach out to thelongergame.com. You can fill out a contact request form there. You can also find us on majority of the social media platforms, except for Twitter. That's the only one that we're not really on. This show is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We're helping brands accelerate growth and become profitable on Amazon. If you'd like to know more, go to thinkcartology.com, fill out a contact form, and we'll get on the phone. That's what it's all about, connecting with you and building a relationship. This show is also brought to you by Arch DevOps. They are the ones that are helping make all the logistics of this podcast happen. We are so thankful for them. If you want to get your podcast up and running and you want to automate as many things as possible, go to archdevops.com. That's ARCHDEVOPS.com. and reach out to them. They can be super, super helpful. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and be blessed.